Okay. Tuesday edition of the After Show. Got Wink and Justice with their Wink over here on the East Coast.
And Justice over here on the West Coast of the contiguous United States. Yes, folks, if there's a red sky at morning in your morning, it means only, well, Tuesday.
Yeah.
Because that's what we call Tuesdays here on the After Show. And it, I don't know. I think in the Trump era, every day portends another storm of brewing. Speaking of which, how you doing, Link?
Not bad. It is 29 degrees and snowing out there. So, the weatherman says next 3-4 days we could get snow. So, and we're back into January mode, I guess. But we've had like a week or so of no snow. So I guess we're overdue. A reminder, get the chat. Just go to netrootsradio.com. Scroll down the bottom of the page, and on the right-hand side of the bottom of the page, there is a link to the chat. So click that. Join us there.
And thank you for pushing that donate contribute button that is to the leftish of the chat room link. We are unable to do this without you. And that is truly not alternative facts.
Exactly.
There's nothing alternative factual about that. Them's the facts, Jack.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Link, here along the banks of the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, it is currently 27 degrees. Ice fog abounds. No forecast of rain for several days. We've been sunny, kind of chilly, mid to low 40s. I mean, not, but fairly chilly nights. Could see some great stars.
There you go.
And that was nice. And then at some point, this fog descended upon us, and it is quite cold. So, at least with that hovering. And I don't know. It makes me think that maybe I should go out and try to mow the lawn or something.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I mean, when it kind of clears up. Hey, I apologize for the sniffling here. Just as we started doing the intros, I started getting like fogged up from some sort of. I apologize.
Weather related, likely.
Or dust or something. You never know. It's I wanted to mention one thing that was discussed between Armando and David, and that was appealing to the rural white voters in a fashion that might have resonated the way that Trump was able to resonate, and that was the example is if she just come out and said something against, if I understand this correctly, dismissing Colin Kaepernick's histrionics, we'll say. Now, in my romantic notion of how a representative democracy should be, our elected officials should not descend into the pruriency, especially the racial pruriency of the base of that electorate. Base meaning the lowest common denominator. My romantic notion is that those representatives raise the consciousness up of the electorate who are not quite understanding what the hell's going on. We used to be able to kick hippies with impunity, and now we have to ask. And that is just such an imposition upon my freedom because we're such tradition. We have a tradition of kicking hippies when we want to kick hippies, and now we have to ask. Next thing you'll know, they'll be bringing in the jackboots, making us sign a registry. That's right, a reservation list in which when you can kick a hippie. Instead of when I want to do it, when I feel like it. I don't know. No, I'm not. That's not directed at Armando necessarily. And no, let me rephrase that. That is not directed at Armando. It just brought up something that bothers me about how our politics works, is that really that romantic notion doesn't work. Or let's put it this way, is probably not currently successful. That we have to be more cynical than that. And that's bothersome to me. It's almost like when I realized, you mean the Easter Bunny isn't really like an Easter Bunny bringing eggs? Actually, that never made any sense to me. A bunny bringing eggs?
Yeah, what's up with that? Yeah.
Talk about mixing metaphors. I suppose if all you get to do is live by an oral tradition, things get melded and changed a little bit over time. That's not to say that the oral tradition doesn't have its beauty, but if you're going to use it as strict history, you might be wanting and lacking in a certain fact here and there. Like, I've heard the comparison of, like, George Washington, the story, he chopped down the cherry tree and then he told his dad because he could never tell a lie, right? And that's supposed to be, the pinnacle in which we should be basing our civic duty upon, is that we don't fall for alternative facts and lies. We should be like Washington and never told a lie. Of course, that story is a complete lie. Well, at least a fabrication. So it always strikes me as kind of funny, is that those iconic stories are kind of predicated upon embellished PR at the time. I mean, let's be clear. So, hey, these are the issues we will be attending to today because it's Tuesday, and that means we're going to be visiting with Chris Reeves. So I should not dally.
Right.
Wink. Get this. A Trump-loving elected Ohio official goes bonkers over the Women's March, complaining, and this is a quote, "Only idiots are obsessed with equality." Okay. I guess that guy hates American democracy, In a harbinger of what is to come during the Trump era, you'll love this week. South Dakota lawmakers, meaning Republicans, declare a state of emergency to force the repeal of the voter-imposed ethics law that was just decided in November. State of emergency, martial law. And they said Obama was going to come for your guns. Interesting, isn't it, Wink?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Does that sound like democracy to you? Or does that sound like something that would happen in Tsarist Russia?
Indeed.
Or, I don't know, maybe just after Tsarist. It happened during Tsarist Russia and after. Let's be clear on that one, too. Speaking of which, an ex-CIA Russian bureau chief reports that the spy agency fears that Trump will personally endanger the lives of those collecting intelligence against Putin. Now, does that mean an actual direct phone call? No, but standing in front of cameras and CIA bureau, Oh, my God, Wink. But I don't know. They actually fear it being a little bit more spy novelish. Eek.
Exactly.
Now, I did mention that for the last half, we get to visit with Chris Reeves, and indeed we do. And, of course, he will always be known affectionately as Tom Servo 433, which is, of course, an affectionate nod at Mystery Science Theater.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And we're going to be getting some more information about two more DNC chair candidates. Now, some deep background on CIA head former Kansas Representative Mike Pompeo and the deleterious effects of freezing both federal hiring and the EPA, and what those freezes will have on Kansas, Missouri, the residents of Flint, Michigan, Indian country, and I don't know, maybe the earth. All that, plus the Connect Unite Act Daily Codes community calendar, and more. There's always more on the after show with that ever so fine fellow with his ever so subtle East Coastal elitism, and his name is Wink, and this guy back over here on the West Coast with my ever so brazen, not bound by any geographical location elitism. It's just kind of like a general all-purpose elitism. And my name is Justice, and we do this 5 days a week for an hour-ish in this particular tear in the fabric of space-time. Because who loves you, baby? Okay. I don't know. We mix metaphors and emotional intonations here on the after show Wink because we're all purpose.
Right.
We're all purpose. Oh, my God. I almost went with a story about this restaurant owner in Pennsylvania who kicked table of black kids out, college students out of his restaurant because he said Trump's president now and I can do and say whatever I want. Of course, he used the N-word and stuff, and the guy got it on his Facebook thing, And it's just, I don't know. Seems to me, and I got to say this, in spite of what Gore Vidal called American amnesia, that predicament that we suffer here, and it's an ailment that's peculiar to us, that we can't remember what happened last week, so there's no way we're going to know historically what happened, in World War II or whatnot, right? It's just in the nether reaches of unreachable memory. Now, in spite of that, the one thing that we've never been able to forget is the forgotten man, right? Who is the forgotten man? Well, that rural kind of, socio-economic, descriptive type individual who resides in a particular, I don't know, less populated area, shall we say. And apparently, I don't know, they purport to be God-fearing people, and I guess we measure that as being, from the Word of God. And so their word must have much more sacred value, and I don't know. Actually, that's almost like punching down, because, no, on the other hand, what the hell are we doing? Wyoming, Cheney country, has more say than the Bay Area alone. For instance, the Bay Area has much more people than Wyoming. But, majority rules. That was sort of a quaint notion while it lasted, huh, Wink?
Indeed.
I'm sorry. I shouldn't dally. These aren't terribly long stories. What can you say about a Trump-loving Ohio official who goes bonkers over the Women's March saying only idiots are upset with equality? And this guy got voted in.
Yeah.
I guess you could do that in Ohio. He apparently has a constituency for this. So I don't know who. Well, on the other hand, there I was complaining about not falling to the prurient interests of certain racial animosities and maybe attempting to raise those up. When they go low, we go high. So maybe it's not. Maybe it is wrong to blame the voters to keep voting these idiots in. But I don't know. Maybe in a representative democracy, they're supposed to represent what the population is, like a mirror. Boy, we got our work cut out for us, Wink.
Yeah.
An Ohio town, by the way, this is by Travis Gettys out of a Raw Story, refuses to apologize for calling a woman mentally ill during a contentious Facebook argument over the Women's March. Well, it's not like it was in, their city hall. But Bruce Jones, the fiscal officer for Westchester Township, shared a post by conservative blogger Matt Walsh about the March Saturday that challenged women to name a right men have, but they don't. Besides the right to kill their kids. Oh, God. Reported the Cincinnati Enquirer. Yeah, nothing provocative about what they do. Huh? I love that. One of the official's Facebook friends told Jones she faced inequality every day and complained that he had mansplained women's rights to her. That's when Jones launched into all caps tirade. I don't know. That's how you yell online, of course. I'm not going to yell, but these are all caps. You think you're going to censor me because I'm a man? You are ill, Jones responded. Now be off. Back to the asylum. I love their, I don't know, they have a certain flair for the dramatic, don't they? Well, what do they say? A little knowledge is a dangerous thing, especially when it impacts behaviors. The township official, who was up for re-election in 2019, complained about liberals' obsession with equal rights. I don't know. I guess our worldview, or at least mine from where I'm sitting, it must be so out there, Wink.
Yeah.
I have no idea what this guy is talking about. Does he live and is elected a representative democracy? I mean, what the hell?
Somehow got elected. I don't know.
Or, I don't know. It sounds to me like he's got a certain sheriff of Nottingham, somebody who's, sort of elected by the aristocracy. We'll see. Well, he is up for re-election, isn't he? Now, he goes on, they're obsessed with equality above all else. As if they'd recognize it, though it's all around them, Jones wrote. Something happened to them, and now they're jaded. They're broken people with varying degrees of mental illness, impairing their ability to be rational. Yeah, it's us who are impaired. Okay. I don't know. Maybe they're right. Maybe this idea of equality and empathy and generosity, maybe these are traits that will truly bring down humankind. What the hell, Wink? We're a scourge upon the existence of our species.
Exactly.
Jones then complained that servicemen had given their lives to ensure the woman's right to affirmative action. These are quotes by he, by the way. Free access to judicial recourse, child abortion on demand, and organized protests where you drag your living child around, dressed like, your Kahootie down there, while carrying a sign, F you, Trump. Well, the father of 2 daughters told the Inquirer his comments were a non-story. And his only regret was deigning to explain his view to the residents he serves. They're never going to listen, Jones said. It's like trying to argue with an idiot. Wow. Does this guy want to be elected again? Nora Rubinoff, a Westchester Republican who posted a screenshot of the conversation on Twitter, said she was pissed off, her words, by the elected official's remarks. He doesn't have to agree with everyone, said Rubinoff, who considered herself a Republican until she heard Trump boast that he had gotten away with grabbing women by, their cahooties. But regardless of my politics, she said, this kind of crap cannot happen. I like her. Maybe she should run.
Yeah. Yep.
Jones, who told the newspaper the Trump's election was a victory for equality, doesn't care what Rubinoff or anyone else thinks about his political viewpoints. Take a look, he said. Wow. Like I said, have they ever allowed us to forget about the forgotten man? Like this guy? Give me a break. Silent majority. That's another joke. When were they ever silent? I mean, they were in your face. Kick a hippie. And then they never did it silently. They boasted about it. We got to kick a hippie. Yep. It's almost like living our childhood all over again. I love it. South Dakota. I have family in South Dakota. I mean, my dad grew up there. I used to bale hay every summer. Oh, and alfalfa too. That's what I mean when I say that. Oh my. Hold on just one moment. I'm having an issue here with getting things to open up. But so I wouldn't say that I have any, inherent knowledge about current political makeup of South Dakota, other than, I don't know, seems as racist and small-minded, provincial as it was when I was visiting, except they've now progressed from party line telephones to, Facebook, which is about the same thing, if you ask me.
Pretty close.
That's just me.
Pretty close.
Serious. Listening in on other people's conversations, telling stories behind their backs from what you think you know. Jesus. Like I said, I don't think it's changed at all.
Not really.
So, yes, indeed, they have there was a voter-driven bill that was passed just this November that would force an ethics law on these fair representatives of their grand domain. And this is by David Edwards out of Raw Story. Lawmakers in South Dakota are invoking emergency powers to overturn an anti-corruption law that was passed by a ballot measure during the 2016 election. The South Dakota Government Accountability and Anti-Corruption Act makes it illegal for lawmakers to receive more than a total of, this is what they're complaining about. They only get $100 annually from lobbyists in the form of any compensation, reward, employment, gift, honorarium, beverage, meal, food, or other thing of value made or given directly or indirectly. The law, which was passed by a majority of voters in November, immediately incited panic among state officials and lawmakers. Some resigned from their posts, while others canceled meetings with any groups represented by lobbyists. And I can understand that. They go, I make a measly salary as it is. I mean, this is my supplemental income. How dare you? Now, $100, I got to tell you, is nothing, especially that if they're found guilty of violating the act, $1,000 for each violation. Now, I don't know. I mean, on the other hand, there's other stories too. You know about trickle-down theory. The only way the trickle-down theory occurs is when bad things happen, not good things. Right. So when these impositions of these lobbyist limits occur, lots of trickle-down happens. Like, people aren't able to go out and buy that $100 steak at lunch, and then you got to tack on the $1,500 wine. Now, those are exaggerations, but still, $100 for a whole year, that's nothing. And on the other hand, I've been to South Dakota, and they're really not known for fine dining. So maybe you can make $100 at Taco Bell last for a while. That's called foreign food, by the way.
Yeah.
Let's see. According to a statement from the advocacy group Represent South Dakota, lawmakers are now trying to use their emergency powers to bypass normal checks and balances and repeal America's First Statement Anti-Corruption Act. Is an unprecedented maneuver. State lawmakers are planning to declare a state of emergency. So the repeal of the Anti-Corruption Act would take effect immediately and deny voters their right to another vote on the measure through a veto referendum. The bill guts all of the Act's provisions, including creation of an independent ethics commission, limits on lobbyist gifts to politicians, tougher penalties for bribery, stronger transparency, and a 2-year ban on politicians becoming lobbyists when they leave office. Well, it is, as that list there just shows that this is going to be a big-time imposition on their way of life. Represent South Dakota warned that the repeal measure, HB 1069, was so poorly worded that it may actually legalize bribery, which I always say is a feature, not a bug. There's nothing accidental about that.
Right.
And spokesperson for Represent South Dakota, Don Kronzale, said that the legislator is brazenly overturning the election result, declaring a fake emergency to prevent the people of South Dakota from having their say. Indeed it is. Well, I don't know. People vote for that stuff, Wink.
I guess, yeah.
This is a bit frightening. This is also by David Edwards out of Raw Story. Steve Hall, a former CIA head of Russia operations, revealed that the agency was having discussions about whether President Donald Trump would endanger the lives of sources who collect information that damages Russian President Vladimir Putin. NPR national security correspondent Mary Louise Kelly reported yesterday that falsehoods told by Trump during a recent visit to the CIA may have done more harm than good when it came to repairing relations with the agency. Now, let me jump in real quick. I got to remind folks. He took 50 people that he, were either paid staff or people he hired to come there. And this is a tactic he's used long before he ever became a politician. It's actually an old tactic. I mean, I experimented with it in junior high, but the moral implications and, about what it meant to do with your art, I got my sister to bring in 10 of her girlfriends, and I don't know, I paid them a couple of bucks or $5 a piece to stand in the back of the auditorium while my junior high school band was playing, and then they're supposed to rush the stage. And so that activity always draws interest, of course. There's people that really like them. But I got to tell you, I mean, I did that once or twice, and even in junior high, we said, that's kind of weird. We're either playing the stuff good and people are going to rush the stage on their own. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Trump's taken it to, way into adulthood, right? So he goes into hollowed ground, Wink, in front of a wall in which people have died who, in many cases, will never be known to the rest of us. And in some cases, maybe not even their families. And I don't know. I guess I'm old-fashioned. I mean, to me, that's honoring that is patriotism. Not a military parade down Pennsylvania Avenue on Patriot Devotion Day.
Right.
Break. So he's saying, I never had a problem with you to begin with, Kelly explained. It's probably not true. In that same speech out of the CIA this weekend, Trump also falsely inflated the size of the crowd at his inauguration. Now, this is what's crazy. I mean, many of these people, part of, unless you're just a strict secretary, of any gender, everybody is trained in interrogation techniques, meaning, how you can elicit lies from people and catch them in repeated falsehoods, right? And here's a guy that just lied. And he's the president of the United States. I wonder what the hell the few actual CIA people there. Oh, there was the command staff that were there for that day,
yeah,
who were sitting in the front row, who never stood up and never clapped, right? An ongoing investigation into Russia's interference in the U.S. election on behalf of Trump made his speech to the CIA awkward, Kelly said, because officials were worried that the new president may burn intelligence sources who embarrass Putin. Here is the question that another CIA veteran put to me after watching Trump's speech this weekend that NPR correspondent stated. This is Steve Hall. He was a CIA chief of Russia operations, and he asked, what happens when the CIA collects a stellar piece of intelligence that puts Vladimir Putin in a bad light? Hall said, what happens when the CIA briefs Trump and he wants to know the source? And Hall's quote directly to me was, how can you say no, we don't trust you with the sourcing of that information? That is a live question today at Langley. Indeed. Well, these are the kinds of philosophical and moral considerations the great philosophers from even before the Greeks had to ponder. And I suggest we ponder it during the break while we listen to Jim Hightower and as we connect our call with Chris Reeves. And then we'll come back, go through the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar and finish up the show with some very important information about what is to be and what is happening right now. You're listening to the After Show on Netroots Radio with Lincoln Justice, and we will be right back.
Breaking news. An amazing new school for political activists is training thousands of people to be community organizers using Saul Alinsky's classic manual, Rules for Radicals. Called the Grassroots Leadership Academy, The school gives how-to lessons in everything from mounting successful protest actions to recruiting middle-of-the-road voters. Progressives need this, but wait. Who's that hiding behind Saul Alinsky? Good grief, it's the Koch brothers. Yes, this grassroots outfit has been set up by the gabillionaire Koch boys to train cadres of right-wing corporatists to spread their ideological laissez-faire dust across the land. The Academy is run through Americans for Prosperity, Charlie's and David's political wing, which put up $3 million to get it going. About 10,000 people have gone through some of the training sessions in 36 states. The brothers' grandiose scheme is to take over the Republican Party and use it as their tool to rebuild America itself into a Kochlandia ruled by the super-rich. Even their money, however, can't overcome one huge barrier: their message. The Academy's curriculum, for example, is loaded with such corporate nonsense as a course titled The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. Attendees were indoctrinated with two overarching lessons. One, freewheeling corporate power, unrestrained by labor, environmental, or other public protections? Good. 2. Social Security, unemployment benefits, and other social programs? Bad. This is Jim Hightower saying Koch College for Right-Wing Social Engineers is peddling a status quo agenda of corporate elitism, which the vast majority of Americans are now openly rebelling against. It's like trying to sell chicken salad made of chicken manure. There's not enough sugar in the world to make people swallow that.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
Creatures who reside in the cloud whose advanced intergalactic technical abilities allow Netroots Radio, and thus by extension the after show, to span the globe, the solar system, out past the Oort cloud, way past out there into interstellar space, the freezing zone, and beyond.
Yeah.
Well, or as we like to say, we go where the tubes go. Take us there. Today's Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar is facilitated by the esteemed cartoonist Eric Lewis. And his little thing today is about little things. And since we're all decompressing still from the inauguration and the marches, people are taking a bit of a break while they organize for the next Connect, Unite, Act actions. But he's been going into his New York vintage clothing stores and picking up a few items. And that's the little things that he's been doing to get through until we start it up again. And so that is your Connect, Unite, Act Daily Coast community calendar for the 24th of January. Do go there. Plenty of links for group meetups to be, and also photographs of the march and other meetups that have been had. So do that. So now we're in the last half, and we are visiting once again with Chris Reeves. Thank you, Chris. You're not truly in the tundra, are you? Today, are you at home?
Yeah, I'm home. It's nice and sunny. There's no snow out. It's just cold.
Okay, great. Well, I thought that what we would do is start off with because there's a few people running for DNC chair, and I think and you're doing a stellar service in presenting these folks' platforms and their bios and what their mission statement would be, as it were. So let's see. Why don't we start with I believe it is Idaho. Sally Boynton Brown makes her case.
Okay. So Sally Boynton Brown is the executive director of the Idaho Democratic Party. She is also the chair of the state executive directors committee within the party. So what happens is that inside the party, all the state executive directors have their own caucus of sorts, and they elect one person to be the president of that, and she is that role. And she's pretty well liked amongst fellow executive directors. She leapt into this race. Let me put it this way. This race originally started out with a framing of, a couple people were in at the beginning, and now, humorously, several of the people who were in at the very beginning are gone. If people remember right, we started out with Howard Dean, Keith Ellison, Martin O'Malley, that was kind of the big early field. Well, now O'Malley and Dean are gone, and they've been replaced by, a gaggle of other people. But several of these who've joined the race late have done so because they looked at the field and they said, hey, these specific issues aren't being discussed or talked about, or they openly worried that we were getting into a debate of, hey, this is Hillary versus Bernie 2.0, which despite some on both sides who really want that, that's over. We have to move on because the next most important thing isn't Hillary v. Bernie. It's what happens in Georgia 6th, Kansas 4th, the special elections that are coming in the next 6 months. And in this November, we've, of course, got the Virginia House and Senate. And these are important for the party because, hey, they set up what happens, next. And so for people like Sally Boynton Brown, she looks at it and says, what the heck are we doing? We're busy talking about stuff that has, she was like, now's not the time to litigate the primary. Right. So let's bring somebody in who is an executive director. So her point to me was, I know the money business. I know where we're at as far as the problems we face. And we need somebody who's going to look at this from a managerial style.
Well, let me ask real quick. I mean, it does seem like a debate about dynamics. Do we go with a policymaker who can, invigorate on a visceral level, or do we go with an administrator? And so does DNC chair have to put on both those hats, or is one more prominent than the other?
Okay, so this is the part where, and this is just my opinion, and there will be some people who really disagree with me, but the DNC chair's position has really nothing to do with policy. They're there to represent the Democratic policy, but they can't set any new policy. They aren't, Ellison will not be in the House if he wins. Tom Perez will not be secretary of anything if he wins. They don't have an issues portfolio to define what it is. And more importantly, their key goal is to back the candidates that run. And they can't hold any candidate to in the United States, anybody can throw themselves on the ballot, and the party doesn't get to say no. The party can't say, we really don't like XYZ, he shouldn't run. Well, too bad. If he paid the legal fee and filed as a Democrat, then tough. That's just how it is. And that's something that, I think a lot of people think that the chair can do, and they can't. But now the roles that the chair does have are really related to, can they raise money? Can they build cooperation between the separate entities of the party, which is DNC, DSCC, DCCC, and DGA, and DCMO, and some of these others, who are all lined up with, the Democratic brand, who represent different areas, Senate, House, municipalities, all of those different forces. Can they be the person who brings that together? Well, that is part of their goal. And then the other part of their goal, outside of raise money and unite the forces, is be the public face of the party. Can they go on MSNBC, CNN, Fox, all those places, and effectively represent the party in a way where they're a good statesman? It's not to come up with new issues, but they do have to know the issues well enough that, they look good representing the issues of whatever candidate that they're, repping. So those are the big tasks that really face a DNC chair. A lot of the other stuff that people have a tendency to really fixate on are not things that they can do. They're not in any way empowered to do those things. And I think we're running into a real problem of, as much as I love these forums and I love the people involved, there's too much of an expectation of things that this job or title can do or can't do. And as a result, there's a lot of disappointment or frustration when people realize, I'm not getting 100% of everything from the chair's candidate. And I have to point out to them, well, you're asking things that isn't a possibility.
Right.
So, it'll never work. You'll never get that. If no matter how much you want it, if I heard that so-and-so chair candidate promised you that, I could tell you it would cost them my vote. Because they're promising things that we're going to fail, and that won't look good on us.
Well, another recent candidate throwing his hat in the ring is South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Buttigieg,
yep.
And he has quite a story, but could he be shackled with? Well, of course, he already announces name recognition is a bit of a problem, even though he's considered a rising star in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, this is one of the things that's going to dog a lot of the candidates who are in the next rung down. Okay, which, look, the top of the ticket is pretty clearly, Perez, Ellison, and then you've got 6 other candidates, and the other candidates are all good, but one of the biggest issues that they have is Democrats have a tendency to elect these positions in part based on star power.
Right.
I want to be in a photo with them, or I think that they'll look good on TV. And Pete's story tells that, and he would be good in those roles, but are there enough people inside the rooms and those who are thinking, the press is going to love this guy, which, remember, that's one of the functions that we have, that the chair does have. They're going to be the public face of the party. And in talking with Mayor Pete, as he likes to be called, he was very confident about, hey, this is something I'm good at. I have a track record in South Bend, and I understand the managerial executive style, which has become kind of the buzzword phrase that I'm hearing from everybody that's not Ellison or Perez. Hey, I know how to manage, which is good. But the one other thing about that is that whereas Boynton Brown and Ray Buckley and a few other, Jamie Harrison, can say, hey, I've ran a state party in some way or the other. So they understand all the minutia and turning wheels. Mayor Pete, that hasn't been his bag. He understands it, but there's a whole little pieces inside. Right. And that's going to be a problem that not just he has, but it's also true of Perez and Ellison, where they've dealt with the party in one way, but not in the guts. It's kind of like saying, I know how to flush a toilet, but I'm not the person to go in there and plumb it. And that doesn't mean that they can't be great at it. So you've got to kind of weight the skills and say, okay, is this skill? Have you ever played any of those when you were a kid? Those role-playing games where your characters were assigned, their strengths, mental abilities, agility, all those kind of things. Imagine this a little bit that way. You're scoring the candidates based on, in this category they have an 8 or a 9, and this one they have a 5 or a 6, and in this one they have an 8 or a 9. And how do you assemble that to get what you say, okay, this is where I value the importance, and this is how this is going to come out. And I think that, in the end, is the question all of them are asking is, hey, here are my strengths. These are things that, you can build while you're there. And every single one of them, and it's true of everybody who runs for any office anywhere, that's part of what they have to sell. This is what I'm really good at. These are the other things that, I will get better at as we go. I'll build the experience to get there. And I think that's the choice a lot of the DNC members are going to have to make.
Now, one issue that we spoke about last time is that of all these folks running for DNC chair, most of them, and it includes the second tier or maybe even third tier candidates that we've been mentioning, is that they have quite a bit of success in their own right. I mean, a mayor of South Bend, an Idaho leader. So none of those running for the top, it's like the top or nothing. So any movement on trying to fill, the elections on seats that we never hear about that aren't DNC chair? Are any of these new folks candidates for those parts, or are we still empty there?
Well, okay, so here's the way that this works. Within the national body, you have several different posts. You have your chair, which is, of course, the big prize, and then you have a vice president of civic engagement, and then you have 2 at-large vice chairs, and then you have a vice chair who is the president of the Chairs Association. So that's 4 vice chairs. Now, the vice chair of the state party chairs will be that's going to be established the day before or the first day of the DNC form. So that's automatically assigned. Now, in the other race, in the at-large race for vice chair, we have about 8 candidates right now, and that has turned into a pretty interesting race. Although I will say there are several of the people who are running in that who are pretty open in the fact that, they're not running necessarily. Boy, I'll say this and I'll get some pushback, but their method isn't so much I'm running to win. Their method is I'm running because I really think certain points need to be made. Okay. And I really value that. I think that there's something pretty important in doing that, and that's great. In our race for secretary, there are, I believe, 3 candidates. In the race for treasurer, I think it's just 1. Now, that having been said, a lot of people hear, the race for treasurer, there's only 1 person or maybe 2. Why is that? Well, the reason is because in that race, remember, this is the person whose name is going to be signed on to the finance reports. And the general rule is that's the job almost nobody. You want somebody who is of the highest ethical standards, well-respected, no skeletons at all, that you can say, hey, this is a good guy. And I think that there's such broad consensus of, here's a small number of people that could be.
Right.
That's also one of those posts that has, they don't have any role outside of, sign the paperwork and do that. And it's a very, very important role, a huge role, but it's a behind the scenes one. And from talking to other members, I think that of the people who are running for that, they're both, you're not going to hear a lot about that because people are going to say, these are 2 of the best people we have in the party period, who we would trust, them to put their signature on stuff, kudos to them. And that's the one race that I think everybody forgets about because it's under the radar. And then they think, there's no real competition to it. And I think, but these are really great people. They're the definition of great people. And, but as a result, there's not this controversy and back and forth that you get in the chairs and vice chair, debate. Now, the big thing, though, that's happening that everybody's also keeping their eye on is a lot of things are on hold right now until, of course, we settle the chairs race. And a lot of those things are things like seating the Unity Commission, managing who gets posts inside the DNC, and that's not elected posts. That's, regional directors, regional caucuses. Caucus elections will not be until the next meeting, and so on. So, those kind of things are just starting now, and we'll see. It will be interesting.
Okay. Well, I want to move on to some other points of interest. And, I almost called Mike Pompeo a native son of Kansas, but nope, he was born just a few miles from where I grew up in Orange, California. And, but he has, shall we say, a bit of a colorful past as a representative in Kansas. I thought we would. I made the joke we'll go deep background on Pompeo, but let's speak about him a tad. But I really want to get into the federal hiring freeze and EPA freeze and such. But Pompeo was elected a few times, so he has a constituency. But how did he fare in Kansas politics, and what does it portend for being a CIA director? I know he sat on the committee, but geez.
Right. Well, Pompeo stopped at House Rep. There was really nowhere else for him to go. He had hit the ceiling, and he wasn't going to be governor. He wasn't going to be senator. So where do you go? And it was pretty obvious that moving him into a cabinet position was coming. He was one of the two that we were major Kansas figures we were looking to get a post we figured was going to happen. Mike Pompeo is, of course, on the record as very, anti-Iran, he's a hawk. Let's just say he is a significant hawk. He's a West Point grad, which is a good thing. It's hard to describe Mike Pompeo outside of he's a true believer. And as much as I can say, I disagree with blah, 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 I will give him points for not being someone who is, craven selling what he doesn't believe.
Yeah,
does that make sense? There are a lot of conservatives out there who are super conservative, but that they're just selling to the rubes. Pompeo believes what he sells.
The West Point background has a certain telling quality to it. I don't have a knee-jerk reaction against that necessarily. It may have it's just telling because you juxtapose that with Mike Pompeo, and I kind of laughed when I first heard this, but I didn't know so much of his background, is that he's now considered an adult in the room.
Yeah, the thing about this is that of all of Trump's picks, to be really blunt, of all of Trump's picks, Mike Pompeo was probably the least crazy of the picks.
Right.
It's one where I can disagree with him philosophically, but I'm going to disagree with a lot of, things that Trump wants for sure. But he has not been a crazy. Okay. He's not been one of those who flies wildly off the handle. He is a hardened conservative. He's a hawk. He is opposed to basically my view on damn near everything. But I've never dealt with Mike Pompeo and thought, this guy's a lunatic. I have a tendency to think he pretty much does what Koch Industries wants. Right. And he stands opposed for me on every issue, and including internet access and net neutrality and privacy rights and all of those kind of things that I strongly disagree with. But in comparison to say Rex Tillerson, he almost looks like an adult. Right. Does that make sense?
But let me ask real quickly, so we'll get to these next subjects here to sum up. But in terms of, I don't know if this is considered a strict definition of managerial style, but did Pompeo show any evidence of being able to go outside his bubble if he had experts come in? Like in the CIA, people are going to be filling him in on stuff. Does he have any evidence? And I got to tell you, when he sat on the Intelligence Committee, what I remember is just what you said. He seemed like an apologist for Koch Industries, and anything that might impact that was where he obstructed. But he's in a different role now. So will he listen to experts who he may consider to be an underling? Because I look at this administration, and it's like the guy on top is the decider, and it doesn't matter what an underling brings.
Right. Look, the one thing that is true about all of these people that Trump is picking is that almost all of them are people who utilize heavily in, inductive reasoning. I start with the conclusion, and then I build support for the conclusion I've already reached. Instead of give me the facts and then let me find the conclusion. They're like, this is what I want the conclusion to be. Let me build the argument that supports my viewpoint. And Pompeo is definitely one of those. In fact, I would tell you basically everybody Trump has posted is that. Betty DeVos is most certainly that. Where they reach their conclusion of, I'm for charter schools. Now let me go out and find evidence that says exactly what I want it to say to support my viewpoint. And I think the next 4 years is going to be full of that. We're going to get the conclusions before we get any supporting documentation. And, Trump's announcements of things like how many people were at his address or, how many people cheers. Well, that's announcing the conclusion before you get there. And that's how it's going to be for 4 years.
Well, speaking about other long-term ramifications, this seems longer than 4 years because of residual resonance. And that is the federal hiring freeze. We've only got a couple of minutes. I'm sorry, Chris. But and also in tandem with that is a freeze on EPA actions, which essentially means, Flint, Michigan, I don't know what's going to happen to them. How is it going to impact? I see both of those in your area having a grave impact. If there's a federal hiring freeze, anybody to plow the roads, or is that, I know that could be by county, but that's going to be impacted down to that level. Let alone, I don't know, all the other things that EPA does. So.
Yeah, the EPA gag is going to be bad because some of the things that come from that are things like, wastewater management. You get into all sorts of categories that people just don't think about that actually do play out where we need them. This is a kind of a double whammy too, in that, when Trump announced his federal hiring freeze, he did it at, frankly, the worst time of the year to do it, because who's getting hired right now? Who's the number one hirer right at this moment? It's the IRS, who normally uses these seasons to hire in people to do what? Audits. Well, if we lose track of hiring the people to help process tax returns and catch, those kind of things, what happens? Well, audits go down. In fact, over the last numerous years, audits have been way down because they've had fewer and fewer staff, and now they're going to have bare bones staff. So, boy, if you've been eager to, wink around with your taxes, and that's what we're doing. We're really pinching this at both ends. Besides that, people forget the federal government is a huge employer, huge, for jobs that, frankly, we can never do in the private sector. As much as people say the private sector solves, you can't do in the private sector because the private sector doesn't have either the legal authority or, more importantly, there's no way to make money. You can't make money as the FBI. If we start having that, then they're just a rogue army. If you can't have the FDA, making money off testing meat and drugs, because then you turn into you can't have companies police themselves over, are these things safe? You can't have, there's just no way to turn those things into for-profit enterprises. As much as some Republicans would like to, you just can't. It could not be done, and companies would reject it. Can you imagine if we said, "Well, we're going to turn the USDA meat inspection into, companies do it"? Well, you would have, Tyson Chicken say, "Well, wait a second, why the heck are the people from Hormel's doing the inspection?" Whatever,
Right.
Produce inspection. You'd get Hunts would complain about somebody else, and back and it would be bad. I mean, companies would fight each other over who the hell's inspection practice is good. So
now this of course was done by executive order. What kind of permanence will it hold when and if we're able to wrest control of the legislature? I mean, because that's where the purse strings are held, right?
Right. Well, that's part of it, but some of these things that have been done. Trump pulling the plug on the NEA as an example, where he's not going to seat anybody for it and he's calling for it to be defunded. I don't think that's the last you see of it. I honestly think in the next 6 months we see Republicans run a bill, to eliminate funding for PBS, because they'll just say, well, in the age of the internet and all these channels, why do we need it?
Well, they would just say the Koch brothers are running it now anyway, so.
Right.
They have an influence.
No, but I mean, you're gonna get a lot of that over the next 6 months. I think more than people expect, and I think the one thing that a lot of Democrats don't expect is they're thinking to themselves, "Hey, we can, this can get stopped. This can get stopped." I think that there's some things we're going to be able to stop, and I think that there's some things where that train has left the station and there's not going to be a stop.
Well, it's a gish gallop on the macro level. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to have to fend away, and you can't fend them all. So that's what we're up against.
Kind of like, Trump is now saying first of next week he's going to announce a Supreme Court nominee, and we'll see where we go from there.
Well, we'll see. We'll talk more about this and other issues next week. Thanks, Chris.
Sounds good.
Yes,
thanks.
sir.
All right, folks, we better bug out of here. Of course, we always have a little bit of a cushion before Hartman begins. And in the meantime, while we push buttons and twist dials, we'll listen to the Dave Brubeck Quartet with Bluette. Hey, stay tuned to Netroots Radio 24/7, 365. And why? Well, because who loves you, baby? Okay, Wink, I'll see you on the other side.
All right. We're out.